Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Stacey. I am a lecturer at the Throver, the Institute for Education at the University of Wales, Trinity St David. Before that, I was a history teacher at a school in Swansea for a number of years. I also did a couple of years secondment to the Hub team. And one of the things that has interested me throughout that time has been this idea of curriculum. What is it that we teach to children, how and why? So that's what I'm going to have a little chat with you about for my presentation for Brew Ed Cymru. It would be brilliant if we were all in a room together, sharing a brew. That's not possible this year, so hopefully this video will suffice. I'm on Twitter, I'm at Dave Stacey. Obviously the hashtag for the event is hashtag Brew Ed Cymru. One of the things this presentation is designed to do is just to get a conversation started. So please do join in and share your thoughts. I will share the links and the various people that I reference over the course of this presentation. I'll tweet them all out at the end of the video. Firstly, a little bit of an explanation and apology for the title. I needed a title before I'd actually written it. I love a good pun. And I thought, well, I need a framework to talk about some of these ideas for curriculum. So I thought we'll try the old SWOT, the old SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it was only when I came to then sit down and write it, I realized this was a terrible idea. It really didn't work as a structure, but by that point, I'd already submitted the title. So with your permission, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the idea of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but I'm going to keep the acronym, and we're going to see if we can come up with some alternatives to use as a framework for talking about some of these ideas around curriculum. So we're going to start then with my alternative S, and that is semantics. Semantics is sometimes used as a little bit of a negative term, but actually I think it's really, really important. If we don't have a shared vocabulary and a shared understanding of what we mean by those terms, we are going to find ourselves in all sorts of trouble as we come to realize this curriculum. The article above is linked just to the, there we go, that side there. And again, I'll put the link in the tweet. It's a really good starting place. Professor Mark Priestley is Professor of Education at Stirling University. He's done some work with some of the pioneers in the curriculum as well. There's a series of blog posts that really do kind of present a really nice introduction to some of the ideas around curriculum. One of the challenges with any change is that we tend to bring with us our set of assumptions and our kind of cultural norms from the previous world. And if we do that with the curriculum, if we just assume that when we say curriculum, we're talking about a list of things to be taught, we are missing out on some of the conversation that will allow us really to exploit some of the opportunities that this new curriculum presents. It's also worth heading back to the original blueprint for this, which is Successful Futures. The very first recommendation from Professor Donaldson's report was that the curriculum for Wales should be defined as including all of the learning experiences and assessment activities planned in pursuit of the agreed purposes of education. So it needs to tie back to those purposes. It's not just a list of what we taught, it's the experiences, but we also need to build in an awareness of the assessment as well. That is huge, and it's going to take time for us to really start to work together to understand what that means. Okay, so I think one of the first things that I draw attention to on today's presentation is that this isn't perhaps like other curricular reforms where we've taken a document off the shelf, worked out the best way to do it, and then just gone to implement it. Something different needs to happen this time if we're going to realize the vision and the opportunity that this new plan has in place. Those purposes then are the thing that should tie us all together. And with any government document, there can be a tendency perhaps to be a little bit reductive. Each of those four purposes, which I've already seen in a few places reduced even beyond the 4 bullet points, have underneath them a big list of all the different things that we can incorporate under those 4 ideas. And it's really important that we keep going back and we keep reminding ourselves of the full extent of what it is that we are hoping our young people can be and become through their school experience in Wales. So it's really important. I think this page from Successful Futures and ones like it, it's important that we get them and we pin them up and we keep coming back and we're reminding ourselves of them. We need to avoid that tendency perhaps that we have to just try and boil everything down just to one sentence. We will lose some of the richness of those ideas if we do that. So once we've finished thinking about our shared definition and ensuring that we do understand what we're each talking about when we talk about things around curriculum and purposes, let's move on to my W. And I couldn't decide whether to go for what or for who, so I've just been greedy and shoved them both in. It's my presentation. I can do that if I want. What and who then when it comes to this new curriculum? And I think it's worth starting with that question of what. What do we include and why are we going to include it? And the risk again is the fact that one of the easiest things to do is just to roll forward what we already have. We're going to teach this because we've already got the resources. We're going to teach this because we're not going to have to think too hard about how it works. And again, while we can't throw everything out at the time, and there is the risk of throwing some babies out with the bathwater, for me, I think it's really important that we can justify every single hour that we spend with those young people. It is a limited amount of time and we have to make sure that everyone understands the value. But equally, just because we can do something doesn't always mean that we should. I've seen lots of examples where you have the idea, well, anything can become the framework for a thematic unit. And yes, it can, but that assumes, therefore, that any idea has an equal value. And again, I would suggest that they don't. There are some ideas that have a greater value. There are some ideas that are probably worth spending time on more so than others. That isn't necessarily an agreed list, and I'm not for a second arguing that there should be a big list of these are the important things we teach children. That should be co-constructed, it should be negotiated. But we have to accept that some things probably have a higher value than other. So how do we work our way through this? Well, the suggestion is you probably need to find a vision for your curriculum. And that's whether you are a classroom teacher, whether you are a head, whether you are running a collection of schools. What is the vision beyond the four purposes that will help you shape your decisions? This is an example. If you're not following Richard Kennett on Twitter, I thoroughly recommend that you do. This is an example from a few years ago from one history department. It's a history department based in Bristol. And Richard and others were thinking about what their history curriculum was going to contain. And this is just one example. I happen to really like it. Of a school that had clearly put a lot of thought into what were their priorities, what were their visions. And I would strongly recommend that is worth doing as an individual, as a department, as a school, to be the thing by which you are going to start making some of those difficult decisions that will come down the track as you start to develop and build your curriculum. This appeared on Twitter the other day. Another good friend of mine, Nick Dennis, has written a chapter in this book about, again, a history example, but there are others for other subjects, about what powerful knowledge might look like. And if you go to that tweet, other way around again, if you go to that tweet, and again, I'll link it out in a second, Nick's chapter is available online to read. And again, I really would encourage you to spend a bit of time reading around some of the current discussions about what are the important things to teach in your subject. Certainly for us in the history teaching community, lots of discussions at the moment in Wales in the context of what and how much Welsh history should be taught, as well as ensuring that we put across the stories of Wales, rather than assuming that it is one monolithic thing that can simply be dusted off the shelf and handed over to the young people of Wales. Thirdly, then, when we're talking about what, if you're not following these people on Twitter, I thoroughly recommend you do. Mary Mike, Christine Council, Deborah Kidd, all regularly tweet, regularly write ideas to do with curriculum. And again, I cannot enough recommend that rather than just jumping straight in, you spend some time thinking about what other people are doing and thinking about what are some of the ideas that might frame your version of the curriculum. And so all of those are worth a follow. And it would be great if you've got examples of people that you think have been particularly helpful to you in developing your thinking. It would be great if you could tweet those out along with the hashtag BrewEdCymru. When we're developing the curriculum then, I think one of all the various curriculum projects I've been involved in the last 10 years, I think probably the most important lesson that I've taken from them is the idea that actually we're not going to get this right first time. We're going to have to iterate. You try something, you learn the lessons, you pay those forward into your next half-term's work, your next year group's work, while at the same time making changes to what you've already done. Another blog post from Mark Priestley does a really good job of laying out some of the different types of interdisciplinary curriculum while recognizing that they are not always easy to develop. And I think whatever place you hold in a school, I think if you're going to take this forward, my one overarching piece of advice would be don't assume you're going to get this right first time. You need to build yourself a plan that allows you to have a go, to learn the lessons and get it better next time. And I appreciate right now, for many of us, the last thing that we want to do is start thinking on top of the remote learning and the changes and the challenges, what might we teach? But actually, in some ways, I know other colleagues who are saying this is the perfect time to have an experiment, to try some things out, and to learn some of those lessons to take forward. And we'll return to the idea about learning some of those lessons a little later in the presentation. I said I had two W's because I'm greedy, and the second one then is who. Who is it that does the writing here? The page above me is from the Curriculum Wales website. We had a really interesting presentation as a team recently from ERU and the work they're doing with schools, trying to get them into the mindset of adopting this new curriculum. And one of the key messages there is about slowing down. It's about giving yourselves time to understand, for example, some of these principles and some of these ideas from the full purposes onwards. And if you haven't yet had an opportunity to engage with your regional consortia, I think all four of them are doing these kind of activities, then I really, really would recommend you do. But before you jump in, have a look at these and then do this in a spirit of co-construction. That's how the curriculum so far has been developed. There's been a seat at the table for practicing teachers, as well as curriculum experts, as well as Welsh Government policy people, and a whole raft of voices have had their say. It would be brilliant if that was able to carry on, if we could make sure that students had a voice at the table. Not that we are just allowing students to completely write the curriculum, and we're not saying that whatever you want to learn, that's the thing that goes, but this has to be a negotiated, it has to be a co-constructed curriculum. And there's a voice, I believe, for everyone here at the table as we go forward. Okay, now we came to the O, and I struggled with an O. So SWOT, if you're doing it properly, in the pun should be an A. So I swapped it out for an assessment. I told you this was a very, very loose framework for the curriculum. And the third thing I want to talk about then is the importance of assessment. It was back there in that very first recommendation from Professor Donaldson, and it's probably one area where lots of countries in the world, including Wales, are yet to realise some of the potential that is offered by looking again at their assessment systems. The assessment model in the curriculum for Wales is underpinned by an idea of progression, the idea that we should be able to look within one area of learning and experience and start thinking about how a child will develop in that from 3 to 16 and perhaps onwards. And the challenge is actually when it comes to it, there is a lot that we still don't know. We still don't understand about the ideas around how children's learning and how their thinking develops over time. What we know that we can't do is do what we did with the old level system, which is simply stick them in a spreadsheet, atomize them and pretend that children learn by slowly turning columns in a spreadsheet, first orange and then green. That isn't how learning works. So what we need to do is identify where some of the pressures are on us within the system, perhaps some of those ideas around accountability that might enforce that straitjacket on us as teachers, and see where we can remove them. And the other thing that I think we need to do then is we need to think about, if we are really thinking about assessment for learning, what does that mean? In the paper referenced above, Marshall and Drummond argue that one of the problems with the implementation of AFL is it's tended to be the letter of AFL rather than the spirit. People have tick lists to complete rather than really having the opportunity to get in and dig down on what the opportunities for assessment for learning are. And for me, I think if I'm reflecting on my own practice from however many years of teaching, I think probably my AFL has still always been backwards looking. I've been looking at what they've done. I've been looking at reporting. I haven't been thinking about how do I take this learning and really move it forward. And if that's the priority, not the reporting, it's not the bit that we tack on in the end, we're not going to give them their grades yet, we're going to give them their feed forward comment. If we really think about assessment as driving learning forward, then I think some of our practices are going to have to change. I think we have to ask ourselves, at what point in the learning process are we providing that feedback? Is the end of a project always the best place for that feedback to be? How are we best utilizing self-assessment and peer assessment, and not in a tick box, someone can come and see me teach, but in a way that opens up the discussion that says, how is this working for me? How am I able to make the most of these ideas? And where do I seem to be going wrong? Where am I not realizing these ideas? And we can engage in this conversation as a profession, because the reality is we still don't know a lot of the answers around how we do this best. Let's move on to our final point then. So we've had semantics, we've got an agreed definition, we've got our who's and what, we've talked about assessment. I think for me, the most important one of these ideas then is the final one. It's talking. This curriculum can't be implemented. It can't be taken off the shelf, dusted down, and we can't test ourselves on how well we're doing it. We have to realize the challenge that this curriculum gives us. We have to recognize that this isn't a short process. We need to build a national conversation that allows us to share our experiences over the next 10 years. What's going well? What isn't working? And rather than being tested and challenged, we need to be invited to share experiences, to share concerns, and we need to build the curriculum together. The model above me right now is from Hayward and Spencer, colleagues I've been lucky enough to work with from the University of Glasgow, and their integrity model of change argues that where educational change fails is usually because it's under-designed. And it's under-designed in the implementation phase. And they argue that you need these three things. It has to have educational integrity, it has to have personal and professional integrity, it has to mean something to you, and there has to be systemic integrity. And my hope now for the next few years is that it's that last part that we can start to realize together. We can start to think about how through informal events like this Brewed Cymru event, through Twitter and beyond, and hopefully through some slightly more formalized networks as well, we can as a profession come together and start to think about our successes, areas where perhaps we've fallen a little short, and share together the opportunity to really co-construct the very best curriculum that we can for the young people of Wales. So there we go. Some random thoughts, a little bit of a bimble through some ideas around curriculum. What I'm really hoping now is that you're able to take some of these ideas and pass the conversation on, pass this video on, use one of the ideas or one of the papers as a conversation with colleagues in school. I'm assuming you're already on Twitter if you're watching this video. If you're not, get yourself on Twitter. There's a few hashtags and accounts that I would recommend that you follow above. But most importantly, please do join the conversation. If we were face-to-face, I'd be inviting you to join me at the bar for a bit of a chat. The best I can do, I'm afraid, is invite you to put your kettle on and tweet me. But let's get this conversation going and let's see what we can do together to realise the opportunities that this new curriculum offers. Enjoy the rest of your videos, have a really great day, and thanks for taking part in Brewed Cymru.